Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. They're so slippery. This is like my weight training for the year. I feel like I have to blow my nose, but I don't want to right now. How to start this video? How do I normally start my videos? What's a good intro? Like, jazz hands. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I have a bit of a shorter video for you. I say that having just uploaded like a 40-minute video, which I did not intend to be that long. I just got very rambly, but I'm going to attempt not to do that in this video. So today I'm going to be talking to you about 3 big boy books, or thick books, or however you want to refer to them, some long books that I'm hoping to get through in this year, 2023. Last year, I talked about this a little bit in my last video, but I read a lot of shorter books. I read a lot of graphic novels. I read a fair amount of poetry collections, and just like, I felt like I was more picking up things that were in the realm of like, I don't know, 150 to 300 pages as opposed to like 400, 500 and beyond that. So this year I really want to challenge myself to pick up longer books, and I'm really excited to kind of just like go back to the feeling of being in a story for a longer period of time, because I think that's something that I've really been missing. And I also think that once I get through like one of these really giant ones, that it will be very kind of like motivating and hopefully will live up to my expectations, and if nothing else, it'll give me like a little bit of a different reading experience than I have been having. So yeah, today I'm just going to take you through 3 big books that I'm hoping to read this year. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first book that I am hoping to read this year is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. So this I am not just bringing upon myself, or I am bringing it upon myself, but I'm not doing it alone. This bad boy it's like around 700 pages including the index, but if you take the index out, 662 pages. So quite sizable. Also, having started it, I can say that it is also quite dense and like will probably involve a lot of like annotating and just taking some time to make sense of what I'm actually reading, as opposed to just kind of like trying to get through it as quickly as possible. So as I mentioned, this is part of a readathon / buddy read that I'm doing that is organized by @VoidedLux on bookstagram. Her name is Sarah. She's lovely. I highly recommend that you follow her. But she organized this kind of buddy read, group reading experience for this book this year. We're starting in January, so I've already started reading this, and we're hoping to finish in October. And every month we're going to kind of have like a little bit of a discussion in the group chat. We've already had mainly discussions in the group chat about how like we're intimidated by this book, and I'm really looking forward to get into it. I did attempt to start reading this. I think the first person who I heard mention it on YouTube, BookTube, was Emmie of, what's her channel called? I'll link it down below. She's a Canadian booktuber. I love her content, and she was talking about having read this, and I think she kind of mentioned it offhand. And it sounded really interesting to me, so I got it out of the library. At the time, I was house sitting on my own, kind of like in the middle of nowhere, and I started the introduction, and I got all the way through the introduction, and I went, I don't think this is the kind of book that I want to read while I'm like on my own in the middle of nowhere. So it is a thriller. It is kind of, it follows the model of like a found manuscript. Like it kind of has like a frame narrative, if that makes sense. But it has multiple people who are kind of telling the story, and also like, I guess like multiple narrators. So I'm hoping for some like fun kind of like intertextuality, and I'm excited to kind of like attempt to piece my way through the narrative. I already have like some tabs set up. These green ones are for each of my like monthly readings, so I just went through and tabbed all of those, so I have them. And then the blue and the yellow are things that I've already started to like point out for myself to come back to. So yeah, that's House of Leaves, and I'm really excited to get into it a little bit more because at this point I'm only through the introduction, which is again the part that I had already read previously. So yeah, really excited to get into that and on to the next book. So the next one is one that I just brought on myself, and it looks like this and it is very thick. It is, how long are you? 1,153 pages. And it is It by Stephen King. Yeah. So probably you're familiar with the film adaptation of this book. It's one of Stephen King's most famous novels, and he worked on it, I believe, for like 10 years or something crazy like that. I just started this about a week ago, I think, and I'm not far into it at all, but I have broken up my reading into 12 sections, so it's not actually that much. It's not actually that much. It's only about, let's see, my first reading goes up to page 104, so it's like each section is not that crazy for getting through in a month. And if I find that like I'm outpacing myself and I like want to read more than I've assigned myself for any particular month, these are kind of like a guideline for like minimums for me to get to so I can finish by the end of the year. But if I start to get really into it and decide that I want to like pick up the pace, there's always that opportunity. From what I understand, this is a horror thriller, as Stephen King, that's like basically what he writes. And I think it covers like a pretty wide swath of time. So it starts with, what I've read so far is kind of like the iconic, or what I think of as the iconic part of the novel, which is there's this little boy in like a yellow raincoat and he's playing with like a paper boat in the street, and I won't spoil what happens, but that's kind of like the opening image of the book. Primarily this follows like the same monster over a longer stretch of time, and the person who is related to the little boy in the raincoat, I think, kind of being plagued by this monster over a longer period. So yeah, so far I am not really far into it enough to give like full thoughts. I am literally like 24 pages in, which is not far at all, especially when you consider the scope of this. But I'm excited to tackle it. I think I'll feel very satisfied when I complete it. And yeah, that's it. That's it. Do you get it? That's it. Like, but anyway, okay. So for the last one that I want to talk about in this video, the last big boy of 2023, it is Don Quixote by Cervantes. And this is actually just standing in. I haven't gotten my copy yet. It's currently in the mail, so hopefully coming to me soon. But I will put the page count for Don Quixote on screen now. I think it's like 1,000-ish. So I think I'm gonna do the same thing that I did with it and kind of like tab it and give myself a certain number of pages a month so I can kind of stay on track. This is widely considered to be like the first novel, I guess. So from a like English nerd perspective, I'm just really interested to read this and see what I think of it. Growing up, I was primarily familiar with two actually different adaptations of this. So there's a pretty famous ballet. I grew up dancing, so that's like primarily was my first exposure to this story. And then also the musical, which my mom had a lot of like musical soundtracks, and we would listen to like a lot of CDs of musical soundtracks in the car and sing along to them. So that was the other way that I kind of like came to know the name Don Quixote. From what I understand, it's about kind of an aging knight and his like sidekick, and they go on an adventure together. I've heard that it's really funny. I've heard that like people write it off a lot because it's obviously quite old, but that it really holds up and it's very enjoyable to read. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that I really enjoy this. This is actually a stand-in. I don't have my copy yet, and I saw this when I was at a thrift store, or like not a thrift store, when I was at a used bookstore a couple months back, and I thought, oh my god, Don Quixote, I'd love to read that this year. I will pick up that copy. And then I took it home and I realized that it is the first part, like this is a multi-volume. This is the Harvard Classics like leather-bound copy, which is so pretty and lovely. So maybe I'll read the first part in this edition anyway, since I have it. But yeah, it's not the whole thing. It's just the first volume. And I looked online because I was like, oh, well, maybe now since I have like this copy, I should just try and get the other volumes. But there are 10 of them, and they're really hard to find secondhand from what I've done in terms of research. So not so exciting. This does not actually look that long, but I promise it's longer than you think it is. Excited to get into that one. Hoping that I enjoy it. And yeah, that's the third book. Okay, so I know I said 3 big boys, but just since you're here and I have your attention anyway, I'm going to talk about 2 like bonus honorable mention options if I decide that like this is not enough long books for one year and I want to sneak in a few more. And that is, the 2 of those are, I should say, Moby Dick by Herman Melville. This is my mom's copy. It's like a little bit worn on the front, but it's very pretty. And Villette by Charlotte Bronte, which I have in the Penguin Classics edition. I just picked this up a couple weeks ago, like over the Christmas break, and I got a used copy, so it was like under $7. And also it's like, ooh, so deliciously like floppy. I love books that feel like this. With regard to the 2 of these, the Bronte I picked up kind of on a whim. I would really like to read some Bronte. I attempted to read Wuthering Heights in high school. I was supposed to read it. I did not read it. I read part of it in my AP Lit and Comp class and kind of like luckily didn't have to write about it on the exam and was kind of saved from that. But we had an exam on it in class and I like totally blew that. So at some point I would like to brave Wuthering Heights again and like see if I'm not as bored by it now as I once was, and see if I can find some value in it. But I think in high school I was just like, I was totally preoccupied with other things and I was just like, this is not worth my time. But Villette I don't know a lot about, so I'm just gonna read you the blurb on the back. With neither friends nor family, Lucy Snow sets sail from England to find employment in a girls' boarding school in the small town of Villette. There, she struggles to retain her self-possession in the face of unruly pupils, a headmistress who spies on her staff, and her own complex feelings, first for the school's English doctor and then for the dictatorial Professor Paul Emanuel. Drawing on her own experiences as a teacher in Brussels, Charlotte Bronte's last and most autobiographical, I can't talk, novel is a powerfully moving study of the pain of unrequited love, narrated by a heroine determined to preserve an independent spirit in the face of adverse circumstances. So yeah, that's Villette, and I think it sounds really interesting. And then Moby Dick, I think you know what it's about. It's about a guy who gets swallowed by a whale, and I think it's mainly about that. Captain Ahab is someone in this. This is one of the ones that, like, when I think about my education and the fact that I have an English degree, it seems kind of crazy that I haven't read this. So I feel like I should. And maybe at some point I'll do like a video about books that I feel like I should have read but I haven't yet, because I feel like that's another goal, not necessarily for this year, but just like for my reading in general, like post-college, is to like go back to the classics I've missed and kind of like attempt to like update my backlog, I guess. It's hard, right? Because there are so many good books coming out all the time, and it's hard to keep pace because there are the new releases and then there's, you know, things that have been published starting in like, I don't know, the 1800s, but stuff before that you want to read too. So it's like, you can never keep up. But yeah, those are my 2 kind of like backup options. I'm hoping for a good year of reading, a good year of picking up longer books and really challenging myself. I feel like now that I've been out of college for a little while, I'm like, instead of being burnt out on reading, I'm just really excited to get back to like denser books and to challenge myself and to kind of have the feeling of being in school without being in school, like annotating because it's fun and not because I have to, which I'm like totally revealing my nerdiness, but such is life. That's just like, that's who I am and I can't help it. That is everything. That is all of my big boys for 2023, plus 2 honorable mentions, I guess. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. I post new videos every couple of weeks. I'm not really on a schedule at this point, sorry. But if you want to keep up with me more regularly, my bookstagram will be linked down below, and I definitely post on there much more often about my reading and what I'm up to. But yeah, definitely much more content coming soon in the coming weeks. If you feel so moved, please leave me a comment down below and let me know what you're excited to read this year, whether it's a big boy, whether it's a small boy, whether it's a medium boy. All sizes of books are welcome here. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.